Now that we've worked through multiple allelism and sex-linked traits, we're going to look at a few other interesting cases. For these, you only need to know the definitions. You do not have to do genetics problems related to these. Our first interesting case are polygenic traits. This is when one trait is controlled by many genes. So remember, the prefix poly means many. There are many examples of polygenic traits in humans, animals, and other organisms. In humans, we see that height, skin color, and eye color are all polygenic. We know this because if we look at the phenotypes, there is a gradation that occurs. For example, if we look at human eye color, we see that there are people with true blue eyes, and they can get darker with a little more pigmentation, maybe a sunburst around the middle. They can go green, a little more pigmentation, maybe hazel or light brown, and they'll get darker and darker, and some people have eyes that are so dark brown they almost look black. There's a gradation that goes on here from the interaction of many of these genes working together to produce one phenotype. The more dominant traits you have in this set of genes, the darker your eye color will be. We see something very similar when we look at human skin tones. Everyone has a genetic basis for their skin tone. The more recessives you have, the lighter your skin tone. The more dominant alleles you have, the darker your skin tone. And there is a large gradation or variation in between. Another interesting case is pleiotropy. This is when a single gene affects more than one phenotype. This often leads to syndromes, which are many symptoms grouped together under one category, often caused by a problem in one or very few genes. Sickle cell anemia is an example of pleiotropy. One gene has a mutation in it which affects many different parts of our physiology. People with sickle cell not only have the crescent moon-shaped cells, they also have problems carrying oxygen and many other symptoms that are correlated with this disease. It's interesting to note that not every phenotype is completely genetically predisposed. There are many traits that the environment can influence. Sometimes the environment will activate the expression of a gene, turning it on or off. A classic example of environmental influence is in Himalayan cats and rabbits. For these guys, temperature turns on and off a gene for melanin, which deposits pigmentation in their coat. If the animal is in a colder environment, their extremities, legs, tail, ears, and even their nose and face will have a darker coloration than if they are in a warmer climate. There have been experiments done with Himalayan rabbits where we can see that if you put an ice pack on the back of these bunnies, the cold will actually turn on the gene for melanin and produce a dark spot on the back of the rabbit. The same thing happens out in nature, again with their extremities. Here's an extreme case up here with the nose, ears, legs, and tail all turning black because of the cooler temperatures, in this case 20 degrees Celsius or less. If the rabbit is reared in warmer temperatures, so above 30 degrees, we see that it will be a solid white rabbit. There are examples of environmental influence in humans as well. Skin tone is one example. We mentioned already that humans have a genetic basis or bottom line for their skin tone. However, most of us can go out and get a tan. This is changing our phenotype, darkening our skin tone based on environmental influence, the sun. Another interesting thing to look at is that there are many genes on one chromosome. We can actually trace these traits or genes more than one at a time. So if we look at two traits at one time, it's called two-trait inheritance. Mendel did this with his peas, and this is how he figured out the law of independent assortment. Some of these genes found on the same chromosome are located right next to each other, right in the same proximity. We call these genes linked because they do get passed on together rather than independently. One good example of this is fair skin, freckles, and red hair. These genes are located close to each other on the same chromosome, and therefore they often get inherited as a packaged deal. In this lesson, we have covered multiple allelism, looking at human blood types. We've looked at X-linked or sex-linked traits and how those are inherited. And we've also looked at a few other interesting cases of inheritance found in humans and other organisms.